Let's move now to tomorrow's big political story here in the United States. 4 contests, 110 delegates at stake. The 2 biggest prizes are in the South, Alabama and Mississippi. And the polls on the eve of the voting show a race too close to call between the 3 leading Republican candidates. Ralph Reed is a veteran of Southern politics. He's the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Welcome. So when you look at this, Santorum is purple, Romney's the dark red. Speaker Gingrich, though, his only 2 victories, South Carolina, Georgia. Is it safe to assume, or is it maybe no longer safe to assume, that he can put Alabama and Mississippi in his column? When you look at the polling tonight, it is stunning to see these 3-way races. What are you looking for?
Well, it's really remarkable, John, because as you point out, we've got a number of polls in both of these states, and it's basically effectively tied within the margin of error. I think what you look for tomorrow night is you look for Romney to overperform in Jefferson County, which is Birmingham. This is where Huckabee beat McCain by only 1,000 votes 4 years ago.
I can show you that. If we go back here, come to the Republican primary, there you go. Jefferson County. Oops, I got to turn the teleprompter off. There we go. Turn it off, bring it out. See a little history. You're good. Yeah. Your memory's pretty good. That's not
there
bad.
You go. And then where Huckabee cleans up, anywhere that is urban, Romney's going to do well. Suburban, you'll see the vote get split. Whoever wins North Alabama, this is the Bible Belt of Alabama. I know there's a lot of people who think the whole state is the Bible Belt.
Well, this is evangelicals here.
This is where Governor Fob James won his primaries in '94 and '98. This is where Congressman Bob Riley became governor in 2002 and 2006. These are counties up here like Franklin, Colbert, Jackson.
So you say across that stretch?
That's correct. And then down here, again, demographically, the Gulf Coast of Alabama looks a lot like the Gulf Coast of South Carolina. Looks a lot more like Hilton Head.
That was a Romney area.
That's right. So Mobile, Mobile County, Baldwin County, this is, again, where Romney should do well. What's interesting is 77% of the vote 4 years ago was evangelical. Huckabee only won that vote by 12 points because by then it was basically a 2-man race. Romney's only getting a quarter of that vote. But what may save him is the votes being split by 2 candidates, and they're both getting about 1/3 of it. So the irony is that Romney wants these candidates to go away eventually, but he needs them both on the ballot. Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. So this is Alabama. Let's move next door to Mississippi. And the darker the area here in this map, this is evangelical. So you saw how deep the evangelical population is in Alabama. When you move over to Mississippi, people who identify as evangelicals run pretty much the entire state.
Yeah, that's right. But a very similar demographic pattern. Here in Jackson, which is Hinds County and Rankin County, you're going to look for Romney to do better there, okay? But once you head up to the northern part of the state where Tupelo is, again, the Black Belt, the Bible Belt of Mississippi, and again, when you go down to the Gulf Coast, which is Biloxi, Gulfport, there again, Romney will do better. So here's the question. He's not, at least on the early polling that we have, the public policy poll and other polls, first of all, it's a much smaller early vote. It's only 5%, whereas in Florida it was 40%.
And Romney, so that has helped Romney, the organization, that's helped Romney quite a bit.
That's right. So he's not going to have that advantage here. The second thing is, again, based on the polling, he's not doing better among those voters. So everybody tomorrow night, John, has a lot on the line. Gingrich, I think, has to win at least one of these to keep the momentum going from the Georgia victory. Santorum wants to keep the momentum going from the Kansas caucuses. And Romney would very much like to demonstrate that he can win in the South.
And you're in touch with people on the ground. You know the grassroots people in all these states. What are they telling you in the sense that not as much as in other states, but Romney does have, for example, the new governor of Mississippi's on Team Romney. So you think infrastructure-wise, turnout the vote, guy who more recently won an election statewide, that's a good thing to have.
Right.
Santorum and Gingrich are hoping for more of the passion vote, if you will. What are people on the ground saying?
Well, people on the ground are saying there's 2 things that are helping Romney. Number one, these are both now Republican states. They didn't used to be, but the Republicans now control the congressional delegations, the state legislature, and so forth. That's been a big shift from, say, 10 years ago. So there really is, in the Deep South now, a Republican establishment. And you saw with the governor in Mississippi and others, they're getting behind Romney. The second thing is, at a certain point, and you're seeing this even among Tea Party voters and evangelical voters in both of these states, people at some point begin to ask themselves, how much value is in this race going on? So what you have is more pragmatic, strategic voters competing with ideologically Tea Party and faith-based voters. And again, because that conservative vote is split, this race is close. I think, John, if there were a mano, either Santorum or Gingrich, both of these states would be gone to Romney right now.
But he likes the 3-way race. We're going to continue the conversation as we pull out the map. Ralph's going to stay with us when we come back. If Mitt Romney wins either Alabama or Mississippi tomorrow night, you can be certain you'll hear this from his allies. Game over. After all, the former Massachusetts governor is well ahead in the delegate race, and a win in the Deep South would poke a giant hole in his rival's big argument that he can't run strong in the GOP's geographic base. We can, if need be, have that debate tomorrow. But tonight's Truth deals with another big question as the South takes center stage. What impact will Romney's Mormon faith have on his chances? We know some Southern Baptists are told from childhood by their ministers that Mormonism is a cult. What we don't know, I have to say I'm more than a little curious, is why the Christian Broadcasting Network chose now to post this 2008 clip of Romney discussing his faith's unique teachings.
Throughout the Bible, Christ appears in Jerusalem, splits the Mount of Olives to stop the war that's coming in to kill all the Jews. Our church believes that. That's where the coming in glory of Christ occurs. We also believe that over the 1,000 years that follows, in the millennium, he will reign from two places. That the law will come forward from one place and from Missouri, and the other will be in Jerusalem.
During a radio interview in Alabama last week, the host also raised the Mormon belief that Christ appeared to the LDS prophet Joseph Smith in the United States in 1820.
Do you, as a Mormon, believe that America is the new promised land? Yes or no?
You're going to have to go talk to the church and ask them what they think about that. There's no question about the fact that Israel is the promised land. That's what the Bible tells us.
Truth is, there has been less talk of Romney's Mormon faith this cycle as compared to when he first ran back in 2008. And out west, where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is more familiar, there's no question support for Mormons has been a plus for Governor Romney. But there are signs, still signs of doubts, or worse, in the South. Last week in Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Georgia, voters who said the religious views of the candidates mattered a great deal were anything but kind to Governor Romney. Let me show you what I'm talking about using our exit polls. This is in the state of Tennessee. 43% of the voters in the Tennessee primary said the religious views of the candidate mattered a great deal. Look how low Governor Romney fared among those who said so. Senator Santorum had 53, Speaker Gingrich 25, Governor Romney only 16%. That's in the state of Tennessee. We slide it over here. This is the state of Georgia. 37% said the candidate's religious beliefs mattered a great deal to them. If you look at that, you pull that out, again, Governor Romney, only 9% of the votes of those voters who said the religious beliefs mattered a great deal. So tomorrow's more than just a test for Romney. It's a test for the South as well of whether age-old misunderstandings and prejudices are fading or festering just beneath the surface. With us to talk truth tonight, the editor in state of RedState.com and CNN contributor Eric Erickson, Tea Party Express chairwoman Amy Kramer, and still with us, the Faith and Freedom Coalition chairman Ralph Reed. You've done a lot of work on this issue over the years, and sometimes people are taught this from their child and they believe it. I'm not ascribing any ill will to them. They are raised and they believe it. How much of an issue now? If you look at the exit polls, there's a nagging question.
You know, John, I really don't think it's a significant issue. The last time that I'm aware of that we saw a poll question at a deep South state that asked, is this an issue for you in terms of your voting behavior, was just prior to the South Carolina primary. 77% of South Carolina voters said that it didn't matter at all, or it made them more likely to vote for him. And I think the fact of the matter is that if you look at the way Romney's run this campaign, he's been very on message as, I'm Mr. Fix-It, I'm the turnaround artist. This election is about the economy. So when you look at the exit polls, it breaks out that way. Because he's talking about that, voters who care most about the economy, which is the #1 issue in all these exit polls, are breaking his way. And then the other group that votes with him is the pragmatic or strategic voter who says, I want to beat Obama. And so he's winning there. Not surprisingly, Rick Santorum, given his profile on these issues, in his service in Congress and as a devout Catholic, is doing much better among faith-based voters.
When you talk to Tea Party folks across, does it come up at all? If you look at those exit polls, among those who say religious beliefs matter, not at all, Governor Romney does very well. Among those who say it matters somewhat, but not a great deal, he does pretty well. Among those who say great deal, he does perform well. So there's a slice out there who have some question about this. How big of a slice?
Right, but John, I have to go back to my base, which is the Tea Party movement. And the reason we've been so successful is because we focused only on the fiscal issues. We don't focus on the social issues. When you're talking about religion, you're not talking about how to create jobs. And that's what concerns most Americans today is jobs, jobs, jobs. So that's what we need to focus on. I've said it time and time again, and I've said it on this show. We need to get off the social issues. I mean, we're talking primary here, but we need to look at the bigger picture of the general election, because we want to defeat President Barack Obama, and we can't focus on this. It is all about the economy.
To that point, Eric, Governor Romney did an interview this morning, I believe it was with Fox News, and, you know, you says you want to beat President Obama. Speaker Gingrich has been trying to say, well, you can't nominate Mitt Romney because he'll lose. He's a weak front runner, Gingrich says. Here's Romney's response.
If I'm a weak front runner, what does that make Newt Gingrich? Because I'm well ahead of him. So I'm happy to be solidly ahead. And, you know, these are good guys. I don't begrudge them the fact that they're out there campaigning and working hard and getting some support. But ultimately, I believe I'm going to become the nominee.
There are some questions of can Governor Romney win in the South, for example, is one of them. But that's a pretty good answer, isn't it?
Oh, very much is a good answer. If he's weak, then Newt Gingrich is really weak. I mean, what other thesaurus word could I use to describe what Newt Gingrich said? Looking at the map over there, 2 states to Gingrich, a lot to Santorum, a lot to Romney. Gingrich's path to victory is through the South, and he's competitive there with Mitt Romney. That's going to be a problem for him. If Romney can win the South, then I think suddenly, all of a sudden, all this talk of broker convention goes away. I do think, though, that his faith is going to have an impact in Mississippi and in Alabama. In the same way, if you look at those states around Utah on the map, his faith had an effect positively for him.
So you think it's, how big is it? My question is always, how big is the slice?
You know, I would suspect we're probably consistent with Tennessee and Georgia. It's going to be 1/3 to 40% of the voters in Mississippi and Alabama are going to weigh heavily on his faith.
If he wins one of the states tomorrow night, game over?
I don't know that I would say game over, because the proportionality still means that he's not going to have a significant number of delegates relative to Santorum or Gingrich. But he needs to demonstrate, John, what he demonstrated in Florida. In Florida, he was within 2 points of Santorum among evangelical voters, and he basically split Tea Party voters. That's what he needs to do. He's got to keep making the case to the grassroots of this party that on the core fiscal, tax, spending, and moral issues, that he's going to fight for them. And in that sense, this primary has been good for him. And I would just say, compared to 4 years ago, the Mormon issue isn't even on the radar screen. compared to where he was in 2008.
No question. Sure. Everybody's going to stay with us. Hang by 1 second. Aaron Burnett out front's coming up at the top of the hour. Aaron's here with a preview, and you're covering the aftermath of this horrific shooting allegedly led by an American soldier in Afghanistan.
Yes, we are, John, and obviously we've been hearing today that this soldier was a certified sniper, had served, as you know, multiple tours in.
We're on the eve of important Republican presidential primaries, especially in the states of Mississippi and Alabama. Talking politics tonight with Ralph Reed, Amy Kramer, Eric Erickson. You know, the president's approval ratings are down some because of rising gas prices. People are mad. But listen here, the president gave local interviews today across the country, 8 stations, 7 of them happen to be in swing states. You decide whether that's a coincidence or not. The president says, don't blame me, blame the other guys.
The biggest driver of these high gas prices is speculation about possible war in the Middle East, which is why we've been trying to reduce some of the loose talk about war there.
Loose talk about war there. He says the Republicans are being, he says the casualness, which they talk about war with Iran, is not only reckless when it comes to foreign policy, now he says it's causing the price of gas to go up.
This is an extraordinary comment by an incumbent president. I mean, first of all, the reason why the market is factoring in and pricing in what may or may not happen in Iran is because the UN has announced publicly that they're preventing them from getting the military sites. And everybody knows that because Iran poses an existential threat to Israel, that either Israel or the United States at some point will probably have to do a military strike. And that's why, A. B., he's the one who went to AIPAC and said, I'm not bluffing, I won't allow them to have a weapon. So this is hypocritical, number one, and number two, it's irresponsible. It's
a Republican group here, so Democrats watching at home are saying I'm leading a session where everyone's going to beat up on the president. And I'm not. We just have a Republican group in advance of Republican primaries. But again, as the Tea Party voice here, your party was born, your movement was born of concern about this kind of things. A lot of blue-collar people. How much are you hearing about this? At the gas now, $3.76 a gallon, up 29 cents since a month ago. Forget the politics for a minute.
It's huge, and I think in Illinois, gas prices have gone up 57 cents in 4 weeks. It affects every American. It affects their pocketbook. What turns people out is when it affects them personally. That's why they got engaged with Obamacare and now with these gas prices. But look, the buck stops with him. I mean, how long is he going to say, say, blame it on Bush, and now he's saying, blame it on these other guys. He is the president of the United States. He needs to take responsibility. They need to figure out what we can do to make these gas prices go down and do it. I mean, you cannot continue to blame other people, and I agree with everything that Ralph said. I mean, this is a serious issue, and this is what people are going to be focused on going into November. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And John, most people would say no.
Are you surprised at how much, if we were having this conversation a month ago, everyone was saying the president's approval ratings back up, he's more competitive in the election, the economic data seems to be getting a little bit better, and then 6 weeks, especially the last month of higher energy prices, and people are saying, ugh.
Right. You know, it's baffling. Well, not really baffling. This happens all the time. We talk about the day-to-day machinations of campaigns, but there are a lot of external factors that weigh on a presidential election. Europe, Iran, gas prices, whether or not he can do anything about it. The Keystone XL pipeline, I suspect we're going to hear that the Republicans start picking that up again, that having been lost in the Senate last week. I talked to Newt Gingrich a couple weeks ago, and I said the Republicans are premising their entire campaign on the economy going downhill. It looks like it's improving. What are you going to do? His response was, well, it's not. Gas prices are going to be $5 a gallon this summer. People will pull out of one sector of the economy just to get to work and put gas in their car.
And John, when you talk about $4 or $5 a gallon gasoline, you're essentially talking about a $350 to $400 billion tax increase on the American people during a weak recovery.
Well,
so this is a big issue.
All right. Ralph, Amy, Eric, appreciate your coming in. Big day tomorrow. Glad for your help tonight.